The morning sun of Nexus Prime cast long shadows across the crystal towers of the Galactic Academy. Hyunwoo Park walked slowly down the main corridor, his backpack heavy with books and data tablets. The hallway stretched before him like a canyon, filled with creatures he still could not believe were real. A group of tall, blue-skinned aliens with 4 arms walked past him. Their skin shimmered like water under the artificial lights. Behind them came a creature that looked like a walking tree, its bark-like skin rough and brown. Green leaves sprouted from its head instead of hair. The tree being nodded politely at Hyunwoo as it passed. 3 months had gone by since Hyunwoo arrived at the academy. 3 months, and he still felt like he was dreaming. Earth had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. Before that, humans thought they were alone in the universe. Now Hyunwoo sat in classrooms with beings from 200 different worlds. His reflection caught his eye in a window. Among all these strange and wonderful creatures, he looked so ordinary. Brown hair, brown eyes, average height. Nothing special. Just human. Hey, Dirt Walker. Hyunwoo turned around. 3 students blocked his path. The one in front was a Krillian, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that glowed yellow. His name was Vex, and he never missed a chance to remind Hyunwoo that humans were the newest species in the academy. Going to another class you do not belong in? Vex asked. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Maybe you should go back to your little mud planet. The other 2 students laughed. One was covered in blue scales and had gills on his neck. The other looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and compound eyes. Hyunwoo took a deep breath. He had learned not to get angry at comments like these. I am going to Professor Kale's class, he said calmly. Same as you, I think. Xenobiology, Vex said, spitting the word. You think your primitive brain can understand the science we have, been studying for thousands of years? I guess we will find out, Hyunwoo replied. He walked around the group and continued down the hallway. Behind him, he heard the scaled student whisper, Humans are so strange. They do not even know when they are being insulted. Hyunwoo smiled to himself. He knew exactly when he was being insulted. He just chose not to care. His grandmother had always told him that the best way to deal with bullies was to show them their words had no power over you. The xenobiology classroom was huge, with seats arranged in a circle around a central platform. The walls were covered with displays showing creatures from across the galaxy. Some looked beautiful, others terrifying. Hyunwoo found his usual seat in the back row and opened his notebook. Students continued to file in. There was Soo-jin, another human exchange student from Korea. She waved at him from across the room. There were the crystal beings called Vorthak, who looked like living diamonds. Their bodies caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. A group of plant-like Sylvani rustled their leaves as they found seats near the windows, where they could absorb more light. The aquatic students sat in special chairs filled with water. Their homeworlds were covered in oceans, and they needed to stay wet to survive. Hyunwoo watched one of them swimming in lazy circles inside his chair tank, completely relaxed. Professor Kale entered the room with heavy footsteps. He was a saurian, one of the reptilian species that had ruled parts of the galaxy for millions of years. He stood 3 meters tall, with green scales that shimmered when he moved. His yellow eyes could focus on multiple students at once, and his voice carried easily across the large room. Good morning, students, Professor Kale said. His voice was deep and powerful. Today we will be studying apex predators. Can anyone tell me what makes a creature an apex predator? Several hands shot up. Professor Kale pointed to one of the Vorthak students. The crystal being's voice rang like wind chimes as she spoke. An apex predator is a creature that sits at the top of its food chain. It hunts other animals but is not usually hunted by anything else. Correct, Professor Kale said. And why do apex predators develop certain characteristics? This time Vex raised his hand. They develop strength, speed, and weapons like claws or fangs. They become the most dangerous creatures in their environment. Professor Kale nodded. Indeed. Evolution shapes these creatures into perfect killing machines. They must be feared and respected. His eyes swept across the room. Today you will see why. Hyun-woo felt a small thrill of excitement. He had always loved learning about animals, even the dangerous ones. On Earth, he had studied lions, tigers, sharks, and bears. He had read every book he could find about predators and their hunting methods. Before we begin, Professor Kale continued, I must warn you. What you see today may trigger your natural fear responses. This is normal. This is evolution protecting you. When faced with a true predator, every intelligent species experiences fear. The professor touched a control panel, and part of the floor slid away. A large platform rose from below, carrying a containment field that sparkled with energy. Inside, the field was the largest, most terrifying creature Hyun-woo had ever seen. The beast stood on 4 powerful legs, each ending in claws as long as Hyun-woo's hand. Its body was covered in black fur that seemed to absorb light. Its head was massive, with jaws that could easily bite a human in half. Yellow eyes stared out at the class with ancient intelligence. Students, Professor Kale announced, meet an alpha beast from the death world of Grimhold. The class fell silent. Even the aquatic students stopped swimming in their tanks. The Vorthak dimmed their crystal bodies, trying to become less visible. The Sylvani pulled their leaves tight against their stems. The alpha beast, Professor Kale explained, is the ultimate predator. It has no natural enemies on its home world. It can run at speeds of over 100 kilometers per hour. Its bite can crush starship hull plating. And its roar. He paused, dramatically. Its roar can paralyze prey from over a kilometer away. Hyun-woo leaned forward in his seat. The creature was magnificent. Every line of its body spoke of power and deadly grace. Its muscles moved like liquid steel under its dark fur. This was what millions of years of evolution could create when survival demanded perfection. The alpha beast's roar combines infrasonic frequencies with chemical pheromones, Professor Kale continued. The sound waves disrupt the nervous systems of most species, while the pheromones trigger deep survival instincts. The result is complete paralysis in prey animals. The professor looked around the room. Even through our containment field, you may experience some discomfort during the demonstration. This is natural. Your bodies are responding to the presence of a perfect predator. Hyun-woo noticed that many of his classmates were already showing signs of stress. The insect-like students' compound eyes were darting back and forth rapidly. The blue-scaled aquatic beings had retreated to the bottom of their tanks. Even Vex, who always acted so tough, had moved back in his seat. But Hyun-woo felt only curiosity and wonder. Here was evolution's masterpiece, a creature shaped by countless generations of survival. Every part of its body told the story of its species' journey to the top of the food chain. Now, Professor Kale said, his hand moving toward the containment controls, you will witness the alpha beast's most powerful weapon. Remember, this is just a demonstration. You are perfectly safe. The alpha beast seemed to sense what was coming. It lifted its massive head and drew in a deep breath. Its yellow eyes swept across the class, seeming to study each student in turn. When its gaze met Hyun-woo's, the human felt a strange moment of connection. Here were 2 predator species, separated by millions of years of evolution and countless light years of space. But in that moment, they recognized something in each other. The alpha beast opened its jaws, revealing teeth like black daggers. And then it roared. The alpha beast's roar shook the entire classroom. The sound was not just loud, it was something deeper, something that reached into the most primitive parts of the brain. It was the voice of death itself, refined by millions of years of evolution, into the perfect weapon of fear. The roar started low like distant thunder. Then it rose higher, becoming a scream that seemed to tear through the air. But there were layers to it that normal hearing could not catch. Infrasonic waves that vibrated through bone and muscle. Chemical signals that triggered ancient memories of being hunted, being prey. Every student in the classroom froze. Not the kind of freezing when someone is surprised or scared. This was complete paralysis, the kind that saved prey animals by making them invisible to predators. Bodies became statues. Hearts slowed to almost nothing. Breathing stopped. The crystal Vorthak students went completely dark, their bodies losing all light. The plant-like Sylvani wilted instantly, their leaves curling up tight against their stems. The aquatic beings sank to the bottom of their water tanks and did not move. Even their gills stopped working for several seconds. Vex, the tough Krillian who always bullied others, sat frozen with his yellow eyes wide open. His stone-like skin had turned pale gray, almost white. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. The insect student's compound eyes had stopped moving completely. All 4 of his arms were locked in place. Professor Kale watched his students with scientific interest, even though he too felt the effects of the roar. His reptilian heritage gave him some resistance, but even he had to fight the urge to run. This was exactly what he expected. The alpha beast's roar was working perfectly. But then something impossible happened. In the back of the classroom, one student was not frozen. Hyunwoo Park sat in his chair, completely relaxed. His heart rate had not changed, his breathing was normal. And as the echoes of the roar faded away, he did something that had never happened in all of Professor Kale's years of teaching. He started to clap. The sound of human hands coming together filled the silent classroom. Slow, steady applause that seemed impossibly loud after the paralyzing roar. Clap, 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 each sound was clear and deliberate. Incredible, Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet room. That was absolutely incredible. Professor Kale stared at the human student. In 40 years of teaching xenobiology, he had never seen anything like this. Students from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy were still frozen in terror. Beings whose species had conquered star systems and built impossible technologies could not move. But this human from a primitive world was clapping. The alpha beast itself seemed confused. It tilted its massive head, studying Hyunwoo with intelligent yellow eyes. The creature had roared at thousands of different species over the years. Every single one had either fled in panic or frozen in terror. This was the first time any being had responded with what seemed like appreciation. Slowly, very slowly, the other students began to recover from their paralysis. The Vorthak students flickered back to dim light. The Sylvani uncurled their leaves just enough to see. The aquatic beings floated back up in their tanks, gills working frantically to get oxygen, but their eyes were not on the alpha beast anymore. They were staring at Hyunwoo, who was still sitting calmly in his chair with a look of genuine wonder on his face. "Mr. Park," Professor Kale said, his deep voice shaking slightly. "Did you not hear the roar?" "Oh, I heard it," Hyunwoo replied, smiling. "It was amazing. The complexity of that sound is unbelievable. There were at least 6 different frequency ranges working together. The low frequencies to create physical vibration, the mid-range for the actual roar, and those ultra-high frequencies that probably carry chemical information." Professor Kale's mouth opened, but no words came out. How could this primitive human analyze the roar, while species with millions of years of scientific advancement could barely think? "And the harmonics," Hyunwoo continued, completely unaware of how shocked everyone was. "The way the sound waves interfered with each other to create that psychological effect. It is like natural acoustic engineering. Millions of years of evolution created the perfect fear response." Vex finally found his voice, though it came out as a whisper. "How are you not terrified?" Hyunwoo looked genuinely surprised by the question. "Terrified? Why would I be terrified? This is one of the most beautiful examples of evolutionary development I have ever seen." He gestured toward the alpha beast, which was still watching him with what Professor Kale was beginning to recognize as curiosity rather than aggression. "Look at it," Hyunwoo said. "Every part of its body is perfectly designed. The muscle structure for explosive power, the claw configuration for maximum grip and damage, the jaw design for crushing force, and that roar system, it is not just making noise. It is psychological warfare refined to an art form." The alpha beast made a soft sound, almost like a purr but deeper. It was still looking directly at Hyunwoo, and its body posture had changed. The aggressive stance was gone. Now it looked almost interested. "Mr. Park," Professor Kale said carefully, Are you saying you are not afraid? Afraid? Hyunwoo thought about the question seriously. Well, I have healthy respect for what it could do to me if the containment field failed. But afraid? No, not really. Why should I be afraid of something so magnificent? Soo Jin, the other human student, had recovered enough to speak. Hyunwoo, that thing could kill everyone in this room in about 10 seconds. So could a hurricane, Hyunwoo replied. So could a volcano. So could a lot of things in nature. That does not make them less beautiful. It makes them more impressive. Professor Kale was beginning to understand that something very unusual was happening. In all his research on predator-prey relationships, he had never encountered a species that responded to apex predators with appreciation rather than fear. Tell me, Mr. Park, the professor said, what do you see when you look at the alpha beast? Hyunwoo studied the creature for a long moment. The alpha beast stared back, and Professor Kale noticed that its pupils had dilated slightly. In his experience, this was usually a sign of increased attention and interest. I see a success story, Hyunwoo said finally. I see a species that faced every challenge evolution could throw at it, and not only survived, but thrived. I see the result of countless generations of natural selection, each one making the species a little bit better at what it does. He paused, looking around at his fellow students who were still staring at him in amazement. On Earth, we have a saying, Hyunwoo continued. We say that every predator is also a teacher. They teach their prey to be faster, smarter, more careful. They push evolution forward. Without predators, there would be no progress. The alpha beast made that purring sound again, louder this time. Professor Kyle had never heard an alpha beast make that sound before. In fact, he was not sure anyone had ever heard it before. Fascinating, Professor Kale murmured. Absolutely fascinating. But Hyunwoo was not done. And that roar, he said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. That is not just a weapon. That is communication. It is saying, I am here, I am strong, I am the master of my territory. It is honest advertising. The creature is not trying to trick anyone. It is telling the truth about what it is. Professor Kale felt a chill run down his scaled spine. Not from fear, but from realization. This human was describing predator behavior in a way that no other species had ever understood it. Most beings saw predators as monsters, as things to be feared and avoided. But humans seemed to see them as, what? Partners? Teachers. The alpha beast suddenly stood up on its hind legs, towering even higher in its containment field. For a moment, Professor Kyle thought it was preparing to attack. But instead, it opened its jaws and made a different sound. Not a roar, this time, but something softer, almost conversational. It was talking to Hyunwoo, and somehow, impossible as it seemed, Hyunwoo understood. The soft, rumbling sound the alpha beast made was unlike anything Professor Kale had heard in 40 years of studying dangerous creatures. It was not a roar or a growl. It was almost like the creature was trying to have a conversation. Hyunwoo tilted his head, listening carefully to the sound. Then, to everyone's complete shock, he responded, not with words, but with a low humming sound deep in his throat. It was not exactly the same as what the alpha beast had made, but it was clearly an attempt at communication. The alpha beast's ears perked up. Its tail, which had been held stiff and threatening, began to move slowly back and forth. Professor Kale recognized the movement. He had seen it in smaller predators from many worlds. It meant interest, curiosity, even playfulness. This is impossible, whispered one of the Vorthak students. Her crystal body was flickering with confused patterns of light. Apex predators do not communicate with prey species. But Hyunwoo was not finished surprising everyone. He stood up slowly from his chair and walked down toward the containment field. Several students gasped. The aquatic beings dove to the bottom of their tanks again. Even Professor Kale felt his muscles tense, with the urge to stop the human from getting closer to the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. Mr. Park, Professor Kale said urgently, please return to your seat. The containment field is strong, but you should not provoke the creature. I am not provoking it, Hyunwoo said calmly. He stopped about 2 meters from the energy barrier. I am introducing myself. The alpha beast watched Hyunwoo approach without any sign of aggression. If anything, it seemed more relaxed than before. It lowered its massive head until it was at the same level as the humans, separated only by the shimmering energy field. "Hello there," Hyunwoo said softly. "You are beautiful. Do you know that? Every part of you is perfect." The creature made another sound different from the first two. This one was higher pitched, almost questioning. Hyunwoo nodded as if he understood exactly what it meant. "Yes," he said. "I am different from them. They see you as a monster, but I see you as a master. You have mastered survival. You have mastered your world. That deserves respect, not fear." Vex found his voice, though it was still shaking. "Are you insane? That thing could break through the containment field and kill all of us." Hyunwoo glanced back at the Krillian student. "Could it? Maybe. But why would it want to? We are not threatening it. We are not competing with it for territory or food. We are just curious students trying to learn." "Because it is a killer," Vex said, his stone-like features twisted with confusion and fear. "That is what apex predators do. They kill. They kill. When they need to," Hyunwoo corrected. "For food, for protection, for territory. But killing for no reason wastes energy, and evolution does not favor waste." Professor Kyle was recording everything on his data pad. This was the most unusual predator interaction he had ever witnessed. The alpha beast was displaying behaviors that contradicted everything known about its species. It was calm, curious, almost friendly, all because of one human's unexpected response. "Mr. Park," Professor Kale said carefully, "how do you know so much about predator behavior?" Hyunwoo smiled, still watching the alpha beast. "Every human knows about predator behavior. We had to learn. Our world was full of them and we were not the strongest species. But surely humans were apex predators on Earth," said Sujin. "We conquered the whole planet." "No," Hyunwoo said, shaking his head. "We were not apex predators. We were something else. Something maybe even more dangerous." The classroom fell silent except for the soft humming of the containment field. Even the alpha beast seemed to be listening. "We were persistence predators," Hyunwoo explained. "We could not outrun a deer or overpower a mammoth, but we could follow them. For hours, for days, for weeks if necessary. We never stopped. We never gave up. Eventually, our prey would collapse from exhaustion and then we would take them." Professor Kale felt another chill. He was beginning to understand something that changed everything he thought he knew about humans. But that was not all. Hyunwoo continued. "We also learned to work with other predators. We made friends with wolves and turned them into dogs. We rode horses. We used birds to hunt for us. Instead of competing with predators, we found ways to cooperate with them." The alpha beast made that soft rumbling sound again. This time, Hyunwoo responded by placing his hand flat against the energy barrier. The creature moved closer and pressed its massive paw against the field from the other side. For a moment, only the shimmering energy separated human flesh from claws that could slice through metal. "We learned that predators are not evil," Hyunwoo said. "They are just very, very good at what they do. And if you can understand them, if you can respect them, sometimes you can work with them instead of fighting them." Professor Kale looked around the classroom at his students. The Vorthak were glowing brighter now, their crystal bodies pulsing with rapid thoughts. The Sylvani had uncurled their leaves completely and were leaning forward to hear better. Even the aquatic students had come to the surface of their tanks. "Are you saying," Professor Kale asked slowly, "that humans see apex predators as potential allies rather than enemies?" "Not all of them," Hyunwoo admitted. "Some predators are too different from us, or too dangerous, or just not interested in cooperation. But some understand that working together makes both species stronger." The alpha beast suddenly stood up on its hind legs again. But this time, there was no threat in the movement. It placed both front paws against the containment field and made a complex series of sounds. Low rumbles, higher-pitched calls, even something that almost sounded like laughter. Hyunwoo listened to the entire sequence, nodding occasionally. When the creature finished, he responded with his own series of sounds. Not exactly the same, but clearly an attempt to communicate in the alpha beast's own language. What is it saying? Professor Kale asked, fascinated despite his fear. I am not sure I can translate exactly, Hyunwoo said, but I think it is saying that it recognizes me. Not as prey, not as a threat, but as a fellow hunter, maybe. Something that understands the hunt. The alpha beast made a sound that Professor Kale could only describe as agreement. Then it did something that no alpha beast had ever been recorded doing. It lay down in a relaxed position, like a giant cat taking a nap. But its eyes stayed fixed on Hyunwoo, alert and intelligent. It trusts you, Professor Kale whispered. An alpha beast trusts a human. Trust might be too strong a word, Hyunwoo said, but it is not afraid of me, and I am not afraid of it. That is a start. Vex stood up shakily from his chair. This is madness. Humans are primitive. Your species barely learned to fly between stars. How can you understand something we have studied for thousands of years? Hyunwoo turned to face the class. Maybe because you have been studying it as an enemy instead of trying to understand it as a living being. When you only see something as dangerous, you miss everything else about it. But it is dangerous, Soo-jin pointed out. It could kill any of us in seconds. So could a volcano, Hyunwoo said again. But we study volcanoes. We learn how they work. We even live near them. Sometimes because volcanic soil is good for growing food. Dangerous does not mean evil. It just means you need to be careful and respectful. The alpha beast made another soft sound, and Hyunwoo turned back to it. Yes, he said, as if answering a question. They are afraid because they do not understand, but they are learning. Professor Kale saved his data and closed his tablet. This lesson had gone far beyond anything he had planned. But perhaps that was exactly what his students needed to learn. Class dismissed, he said quietly. Mr. Park, please remain behind. I believe we have much to discuss. As the other students filed out of the room, many of them looked back at Hyunwoo and the relaxed alpha beast. They were seeing their human classmate in a completely new way, and perhaps, just perhaps, they were beginning to understand that there were different kinds of strength in the universe. Some species conquered through force, others through technology. But humans conquered through understanding. And that might be the most dangerous power of all. When the last student had left the classroom, Professor Kale locked the door behind them. The alpha beast was still lying peacefully in its containment field, watching Hyunwoo with intelligent eyes. The creature seemed more like a large, dangerous pet than the galaxy's most feared predator. Mr. Park, Professor Kale said, his deep voice echoing in the empty room. In 40 years of teaching, I have never seen anything like what happened today. I need to understand how this is possible. Hyunwoo sat down in one of the front row chairs, still facing the alpha beast. What would you like to know? Everything, Professor Kale replied. Start with why you are not afraid. Every species in the galaxy has a fear response to alpha beasts. Even my own people, who are natural predators, feel terror when we hear that roar. But you applauded. Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully about how to explain. The alpha beast made a soft questioning sound, and he responded with a gentle hum before turning back to the professor. On Earth, Hyunwoo began, humans were never the strongest, fastest, or most dangerous creatures. We were prey for most of our early history. Lions hunted us. Tigers stalked us. Bears killed us. Wolves pack-hunted us. Professor Kale nodded. Many species had similar histories before they developed technology. But something was different about humans, Hyunwoo continued. Instead of just running away or hiding, we watched. We learned. We studied the predators that hunted us. We wanted to understand how they thought, how they moved, what made them successful. That seems incredibly dangerous, Professor Kale observed. It was, Hyunwoo agreed. Many humans died learning these lessons, but the ones who survived passed on their knowledge. Generation after generation, we got better at understanding predators, and eventually we realized something amazing. The alpha beast made an encouraging sound as if it wanted to hear the rest of the story too. We realized that predators were not our enemies. They were our teachers. Every time a lion killed one of us, the survivors learned to be more careful, more clever, more cooperative. The predators made us stronger. Professor Kale's yellow eyes widened. You are saying that predators helped humans evolve? In a way, yes, Hyunwoo said. But it was more than that. We learned that if we could understand predators well enough, we could predict their behavior. And if we could predict their behavior, we could sometimes work with them instead of against them. Professor Kale thought about the wolves that humans had turned into dogs. He had always wondered how such a thing was possible. Now he was beginning to understand. The first human who convinced a wolf to hunt with him instead of hunting him changed everything, Hyunwoo explained. Suddenly, humans had the strength and speed they lacked, and the wolves had our intelligence and cooperation. Together, we were more successful than either species could be alone. But that is just one example, Professor Kale said. Surely not all predators can be domesticated. No, not all, Hyunwoo admitted, but all of them can be understood, and understanding leads to respect. When you respect something, you are not afraid of it in the same way. The alpha beast stretched like a giant cat and made a rumbling sound that might have been contentment. Professor Kale found himself watching the creature with new eyes. Instead of seeing only danger, he was beginning to see intelligence, grace, and a strange kind of beauty. Tell me about the roar, Professor Kale said. Why did it not affect you? Hyunwoo smiled. It did affect me. I felt the sound waves, felt my body responding to the infrasonic frequencies. But instead of triggering fear, it triggered fascination. That roar was like a work of art, a perfect example of evolution solving a complex problem. What do you mean? Think about what that roar accomplishes, Hyunwoo said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. It communicates strength without requiring physical confrontation. It can clear a territory without the alpha beast having to fight every challenger. It can paralyze prey without wasting energy on a chase. It is incredibly efficient. Professor Kale began to see what the human meant. The roar was not just a weapon, it was a sophisticated tool that served multiple purposes while conserving energy. On Earth, Hyunwoo continued, we have creatures with similar abilities. A tiger's roar can be heard 8 kilometers away. It tells other tigers, this is my territory, and tells prey animals, I am here, be afraid. But humans learn to appreciate the beauty of that sound instead of just fearing it. But surely you must feel some fear, Professor Kale insisted. Fear keeps species alive. Oh, I feel caution, Hyunwoo said. I have great respect for what the alpha beast could do to me. But fear and caution are different things. Fear makes you freeze or run. Caution makes you careful and observant. The alpha beast suddenly stood up and walked to the edge of its containment field closest to Hyunwoo. It made a series of complex sounds, almost like it was asking a question. Hyunwoo listened carefully, then responded with his own series of sounds. The conversation went back and forth for several minutes, with Professor Kale watching in amazement. What are you discussing? The professor finally asked. It wants to know about Earth predators, Hyunwoo said. I think it is curious about creatures from my world. I told it about lions and tigers, and now it is asking about pack hunters. You told it about Earth predators, Professor Kale repeated slowly. And it understood. Intelligence is intelligence, Hyunwoo said simply. The alpha beast is very smart. It has to be to survive on a death world. Just because it cannot build spaceships does not mean it cannot think. Professor Kale felt his understanding of the universe shift slightly. He had always assumed that intelligence and technology went together, but perhaps there were different kinds of intelligence, different ways of being smart. Mr. Park, he said carefully, do you think humans could communicate with other dangerous species the way you are communicating with the alpha beast? Hyunwoo considered the question. Some of them, maybe. It would depend on the species and how they communicate. But I think humans have an advantage that other species might not have. What advantage? We are not apex predators ourselves, Hyunwoo explained. We do not threaten the alpha beast's position. We are not trying to take over its territory or steal its food, so it can relax around us in a way it never could around another apex predator. The alpha beast made a sound that Professor Kale was learning to recognize as agreement. It was nodding its massive head, as if confirming Hyun-woo's words. But we are also not prey, Hyun-woo continued. We are something in between. We are survivors who understand the hunt without being direct competitors. That makes us, what is the word? Neutral. We can appreciate what predators do without threatening them. Professor Kale was quiet for a long time, thinking about what he had learned. Finally, he asked, "Do you think other humans would react the same way you did?" "Some would," Hyun-woo said. "Humans who work with animals on Earth, who study wildlife, who understand that predators are part of the natural balance. But probably not all humans. Fear is still a strong instinct, even in my species." The alpha beast lay down again, but kept its eyes on the conversation. Professor Kale had the strange feeling that the creature was learning as much about humans as he was. "Mr. Park," Professor Kale said finally, "I want to ask you something important. Would you be willing to work with our research team? Your insights into predator behavior could revolutionize how we study dangerous species." Hyun-woo looked surprised. "You want me to help with research? But I am just a student, and humans are supposed to be primitive." "After today," Professor Kale said, looking at the relaxed alpha beast, "I think we may need to reconsider what we mean by primitive. Your species may not have the most advanced technology, but you have something else, something that might be just as valuable." "What is that?" Professor Kale gestured toward the alpha beast, which was still watching them with intelligent, peaceful eyes. "You have the ability to see monsters as friends, and in a galaxy full of dangerous creatures, that might be the most important skill of all." Word of what happened in Professor Kale's classroom spread through the Galactic Academy like wildfire. By the next morning, students from every species were talking about the human who had made friends with an alpha beast. Some thought it was impossible. Others thought it was just luck, but everyone wanted to see for themselves. Professor Kale had called an emergency meeting of the Xenobiology department. The conference room was packed with professors from a dozen different species, all talking at once in their various languages. The sound was like a symphony of confusion and excitement. "Order, please," Professor Kale called out, his deep voice cutting through the chatter. "We are here to discuss the unprecedented events in my class yesterday." Dr. Yara, a crystalline, Vorthak professor, flickered with skeptical patterns. "Unprecedented is one word for it. Impossible is another. Alpha beasts do not communicate with other species. They certainly do not form emotional bonds with prey creatures." "With respect, Dr. Yara," Professor Kale replied. "I recorded the entire interaction. The alpha beast clearly responded to Mr. Park in ways we have never documented before." Professor Thex, an aquatic being in a mobile water suit, bobbed in his tank. "Even if the recording is accurate, we cannot draw conclusions from a single incident. Perhaps this particular alpha beast was sick or damaged in some way." "Then let us test that theory," came a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Hyun-woo entering the conference room, carrying a data pad and looking completely calm despite being surrounded by some of the galaxy's most brilliant minds. "Mr. Park," Professor Kale said, surprised. "I did not expect to see you here." "Dean Kaur asked me to come," Hyun-woo explained. "She wants to understand what happened yesterday as much as everyone else does." Dean Kaur, a majestic being with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors with her emotions, gestured for Hyun-woo to take a seat. "Mr. Park, these professors have serious doubts about your interaction with the alpha beast. They believe it was an anomaly that cannot be repeated." "They might be right," Hyun-woo said simply. "Every individual creature is different. Maybe that particular alpha beast was more curious than most. Maybe it was having a good day, or maybe there is something about human behavior that appeals to apex predators." Dr. Yara's crystalline body flashed with dismissive colors. "Humans are a primitive species. You have barely achieved interstellar travel. What could you possibly offer to the galaxy's most advanced predator?" Hyun-woo was quiet for a moment, thinking. Around him, the professors waited to hear how a young human would defend his species against such criticism. "We offer something that advanced civilizations sometimes forget," Hyun-woo said finally. We offer respect without fear. The room fell silent. Dean Kor's skin shifted to curious shades of blue and green. Explain, she said. Hyunwoo stood up and walked to the large display screen at the front of the room. May I show you something? Professor Kale nodded and activated the screen. Hyunwoo connected his data pad and pulled up a video file. This is from Earth, he said. It shows human researchers working with great white sharks. The video showed humans in underwater cages, but also humans swimming freely with massive sharks. The professors watched in shocked silence as the humans actually touched the deadly predators, who seemed calm and curious rather than aggressive. Impossible, whispered Professor Thex. Those creatures should have eaten them immediately. Why? Hyunwoo asked. The humans were not threatening the sharks. They were not competing for food or territory. They were just observing and learning. The sharks had no reason to attack. He switched to another video. This shows humans working with wolves in the wild. The screen displayed researchers living among wolf packs, studying their behavior, while the wolves ignored them or even seemed to accept them. And this, Hyunwoo said, showing a third video, shows humans rescuing a dangerous predator that was injured. The final video showed humans carefully freeing a large tiger from a trap, providing medical treatment, and then releasing it back into the wild. The tiger, instead of attacking its rescuers, seemed to understand that they were helping. Every species in this room has encountered dangerous predators on their home worlds, Hyunwoo said, turning back to face the professors. How did your species react? Dr. Yara flickered thoughtfully. The Vorthak developed energy weapons to drive them away from our crystal cities. The aquatic species on my world built deep-sea barriers to keep the predators in designated hunting zones, Professor Thex added. My people, the Saurians, were predators ourselves, Professor Kale said. We competed with other apex species until we drove them extinct or domesticated them as slaves. Hyunwoo nodded. All logical responses, all successful. But humans did. Something different. We learned to coexist. But why? Dean Kor asked, her skin now showing patterns of deep curiosity. What advantage did coexistence provide? Predators are not just killing machines, Hyunwoo explained. They are incredibly intelligent creatures with complex behaviors and social structures. They have survived for millions of years by being adaptable, resourceful, and efficient. When humans learned to work with predators instead of against them, we gained access to all of that intelligence and skill. He gestured toward the screen, which still showed images of humans and dangerous animals working together. Wolves taught us pack hunting strategies. Birds of prey showed us how to see from great distances. Even insects taught us about chemical communication and social organization. Every predator became a teacher if we were willing to learn. Professor Thex bobbed excitedly in his tank. You are saying that humans developed by incorporating the abilities of other species? Not incorporating exactly, Hyunwoo said. More, like partnering. We remained human, but we learned to think like predators when we needed to hunt, like prey when we needed to hide, like pack animals when we needed to work together. Dr. Yara's crystalline body was now pulsing with rapid calculations. This would explain why the alpha beast responded to you. It recognized something familiar in your behavior patterns. Maybe, Hyunwoo agreed. Or maybe it just enjoyed meeting someone who was not afraid of it. Think about it. When was the last time any of you had a conversation with someone who was not either afraid of you or trying to prove they were stronger than you? The professors looked at each other uncomfortably. The truth was that most interspecies relationships in the galaxy were based on power dynamics, trade agreements, or military alliances. True friendship between species was rare. There is something else, Hyunwoo said quietly. Something I noticed yesterday that I think you should know. Dean Kor leaned forward. What is it? The alpha beast was not just communicating with me, Hyunwoo said. It was learning. Every sound I made, every gesture, every response, it was studying me just as carefully as I was studying it. The room fell completely silent. Dean Kor's skin shifted to alarmed shades of orange and red. What are you saying? Professor Kale asked, I think the alpha beast is much more intelligent than we realized, Yunwu explained. Not just smart enough to hunt and survive, smart enough to understand that different species have different ways of thinking, smart enough to be curious about those differences. He paused, looking around the room at the concerned faces of the professors. Yesterday, when it made those sounds to me, it was not just trying to communicate. It was trying to learn my language. By the end of our interaction, its vocalizations were getting closer and closer to sounds that humans can make. Dr. Yara's crystal body went completely dark for a moment. Are you suggesting that alpha beasts are capable of learning alien languages? I am suggesting that we might have seriously underestimated their cognitive abilities, Yunwu replied. We have been so focused on their physical capabilities, their strength, speed, and hunting skills, that we never considered they might be intellectually curious too. Professor Thex splashed nervously in his tank. But if alpha beasts are that intelligent, why have they never tried to communicate with us before? Maybe they have, Hyunwoo said simply. Maybe we just were not listening. The implications of this statement hit the room like a shockwave. If alpha beasts had been trying to communicate with other species for years, but those species had been too afraid to notice. We need to test this immediately, Dean Core announced, her skin now showing determined patterns of deep purple and gold. Mr. Park, would you be willing to participate in a formal research study? Of course, Yunwu said. But I have one condition. Name it. I want to work with the same alpha beast from yesterday. If we are going to build a communication system, we need to start with trust that already exists. Professor Kale nodded slowly. That makes sense. The creature already knows you, already associates you with positive interactions. There is something else, Hyunwoo added. I think we should bring in other humans. Not just me, but humans with different backgrounds. People who work with animals on Earth who understand different types of predator behavior. Why? Dr. Yara asked. Because if this works, if we can really communicate with alpha beasts, it changes everything, Hyunwoo explained. These creatures exist on dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. Some of those worlds have resources we need. Others are strategic locations for trade routes. But we have always avoided them because they are too dangerous. 3 months after the incident in Professor Kale's classroom, the Galactic Academy looked very different. The Xenobiology Research Center had been expanded with new facilities designed specifically for cross-species communication studies. Students from across the galaxy came to observe the groundbreaking work happening there. But the biggest change was in how students looked at Hyunwoo Park. The human who had once been dismissed as primitive was now leading the most important research project in the Academy's history. Good morning, Kava, Hyunwoo said as he entered the main research lab. He spoke to the alpha beast in a combination of human words and the complex vocalizations he had learned over the past months. Kava, as the research team had named the alpha beast, responded with her own greeting. The sound was still powerful enough to make most visitors nervous, but to Hyunwoo it was simply hello from a friend. Dr. Mi-Young Lee, an animal behaviorist from Earth who had joined the research team, looked up from her datapad. Kava has been asking for you since dawn, she said in Korean, then switched to Galactic Standard for the benefit of the other researchers. I think she missed your evening conversation yesterday. Hyunwoo smiled and approached Kava's expanded habitat. The containment field had been replaced with a more open environment that allowed for direct contact when Kava was in the mood for it. Today, she immediately came to the barrier and lowered her massive head for what the research team had learned was her version of a friendly greeting. I missed you too, Hyunwoo said, gently scratching behind her ears through the protective barrier. Kava made a rumbling sound of contentment that would have terrified visitors 6 months ago, but now simply indicated happiness. Mr. Park, came a familiar voice. Hyunwoo turned to see Dean Core entering the lab, her skin displaying excited patterns of gold and silver. The Galactic Council has reached a decision about your proposal. Hyunwoo felt his heart race. For weeks he had been preparing a presentation for the Council about expanding the research to other alpha beast colonies throughout the galaxy. The proposal was ambitious and expensive, but the potential benefits were enormous. What did they decide? Dr. Lee asked, joining the conversation. They approved it, Dean Core announced, her skin now blazing with triumphant colors. Full funding for research stations on 12 different worlds. Official recognition of alpha beasts as a sentient species eligible for communication protocols. And authorization to begin diplomatic contact. The lab erupted in cheers from the research staff. Even Kava seemed to sense the excitement, making happy sounds and moving in what looked like a celebratory dance. There is more, Dean Core continued. The Council wants Mr. Park to lead the first official diplomatic mission to Grimhold, the Alpha Beast homeworld. Hyun-woo felt dizzy. 6 months ago, he had been just another exchange student that most people ignored. Now he was being asked to represent the entire galaxy in first contact with a species that had been feared for thousands of years. I am honored, he said finally. But I want the team to come with me. Dr. Lee, Professor Kale, everyone who helped make this possible. Of course, Dean Core agreed. This is much too important for any one person, even you. Soo-jin, who had become one of the project's most dedicated researchers, looked up from where she was working with a holographic display of alpha beast vocal patterns. Hyun-woo, there is something you should see, she called out. The group gathered around her workstation where she had been analyzing communication recordings from the past month. Look at this, Soo-jin said, pointing to the display. Kava's vocalizations have been getting more and more complex. But it is not just random development. She is specifically learning to make sounds that other species can understand. Professor Kale, who had become one of the project's strongest supporters, studied the data carefully. Are you saying she is trying to develop a universal language? More than that, Soo-jin replied. Watch this. She played a recording of Kava, making a series of sounds, then showed how those same sound patterns appeared in communications from other alpha beasts in the research network. She has been teaching other alpha beasts how to communicate with us. Dr. Lee breathed. They are sharing information across the galaxy. Hyun-woo felt a chill of excitement and responsibility. How many alpha beasts are involved in this communication network? Based on our monitoring stations, Soo-jin said, at least 47 individuals across 12 star systems. And the number is growing every day. Dean Core's skin shifted to thoughtful purples and blues. This means that when you arrive at Grimhold, they will already know who you are and why you are coming. No pressure, Hyun-woo muttered, then louder. Has Kava said anything about the other alpha beasts? How they feel about contact with other species? He turned to Kava and asked the question in the hybrid language they had developed together. Her response was long and complex with multiple layers of meaning that he was still learning to interpret. She says, Hyun-woo translated slowly, that her people have been waiting a long time for someone to listen. She says they have watched other species for thousands of years, learning about their cultures and technologies, but they could never make contact because everyone was too afraid. They have been watching us? Professor Kale asked, his voice uncertain. Not hunting, Hyun-woo clarified, listening to more of Kava's explanation. Observing, learning. She says alpha beasts are natural scientists. They study everything in their environment, including the species that visit their worlds. So when humans finally made contact, Dr. Lee said thoughtfully, Kava already knew a lot about our species. She knew we were different, Hyun-woo confirmed. She had observed humans, working with Earth predators through our broadcasts and communications. She was curious to see if we would react the same way to her. The implications were staggering. Alpha beasts had been studying galactic civilization for thousands of years, accumulating knowledge about technology, culture, and behavior. They were not savage predators. They were researchers who had been waiting for someone brave enough to make first contact. Mr. Park, Dean Core said seriously, I think you should know that this mission will be dangerous. Even if the alpha beasts are peaceful, Grimhold is still a death world with countless other hazards. I understand, Hyun-woo replied. But this is bigger than my safety. This is about changing how the galaxy sees predators, how we define intelligence, how we approach other species that seem dangerous. He looked around at his research team, all of whom had become close friends over the past months. Humans working, alongside Vorthak, Saurians, aquatic beings, and dozens of other species. all united by curiosity and respect for a creature they had once feared. Besides, he added with a smile, I will not be going alone. I will have the best team in the galaxy with me, and Kava has promised to teach me enough of the Alpha Beast language to be polite. Kava made a sound that everyone had learned was her version of laughter. Even after months of working together, the sound still amazed the researchers. Who would have thought that the galaxy's most feared predator had a sense of humor? When do we leave? Dr. Lee asked. In 2 weeks, Dean Kor replied. The Council wants to move quickly before political opposition can build up. There are still many species that believe alpha beasts are too dangerous for diplomatic contact. They will change their minds, Yunwu said confidently. Once they see what we have accomplished here, once they understand what alpha beasts really are, everything will change. As the team returned to their work, preparing for the most important mission in galactic history, Hyunwoo spent a few quiet minutes with Kava. She had become not just a research subject but a friend whose intelligence and kindness had changed his understanding of what it meant to be a predator. Are you ready for this? He asked her in their shared language. Her response was complex, but the meaning was clear. She was ready. Her people were ready. They had been waiting for thousands of years for someone to see past the teeth and claws to the intelligence and curiosity beneath. For the first time in galactic history, humans and alpha beasts would work together as equals. And perhaps, just perhaps, they would show the rest of the galaxy that the difference between monster and friend was often just a matter of perspective. The young human who had once been dismissed as primitive was about to become the bridge between species, proving that sometimes the greatest strength came not from power or technology, but from the simple courage to see the good in others.